Let's have a quick discussion about the save call.
El Camino.
Yeah, El Camino, if we can. And first, before we dive into the specifics about the El Camino save, I want to also tie this into, you're watching this, maybe you're not a firefighter, maybe you'll never be a firefighter, right? But how can you utilize some of these tools and techniques that Chief Kastros is going to talk about to save your kids from screaming and causing your wife to go crazy because it's a Friday afternoon and they're home from school, right?
Yeah.
So we face those stressful situations at work, at home, and how we can use that stress to define who we are and how we respond. Yeah. But describe that situation if you can, and how you prepared both your fellow firefighters and the command that you had, and how you personally prepared as you were driving to that incident.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. This fire happened in 2010. It was August 10th in the morning. We were dispatched to a fire at a Goodwill store, and that pulls a lot of equipment. A lot of apparatuses on the road going code 3 to this fire. Well, it ended up, the update was that it was actually an extinguished sign fire. It was like nothing. The alarm system went off. That's where we got dispatched. So it was clear this wasn't going to be much of anything. And at the same time, dispatch told me that we had a second fire being dispatched in our same battalion. This was an actual apartment fire with a child trapped. So this became the instant priority. So I deployed the resources going to the Goodwill store. There was nothing. To the apartment fire.
Let's go ahead and divert everybody from the Goodwill fire to the apartment fire and backfill that Goodwill fire.
That was a huge thing that we'll talk about later on why that played a huge role in this event.
9-7's on 07 for roll call to El Camino. We're going to suspend roll call. We've got a working fire with the victim trapped. 9-7's assuming El Camino command. It's going to be a 2-story garden-style apartment complex. Command post is located across the street on the A side. It's going to be an offensive strategy, repeating potential victim trapped in apartment 4-5.
So we ended up going to this apartment fire. There's a child trapped on the second floor. The dad comes out. He meets the crews out at the street. I'm there with them. I set up the incident command system. I'm setting up command. And they're told, my son is trapped. He's 4.5 years old. He's in the back bedroom. Well, the fire has engulfed the entire kitchen, living room, hallway, and one of the bedrooms of the apartment, and it's blowing out the back slider on the back side of the apartment, and it's getting into other apartments via the attic space and the door that he left open into the breezeway. And so because we had diverted and we were already committed to the one fire at the Goodwill store, a second alarm was automatically dispatched. So this brought me 24, 25 resources. Normally you get, half that.
110, upon your arrival, you're going to assume a rescue group. You've got Truck 106 working for you. We've got a confirmed rescue. You've got Truck 106 working for you, your rescue group.
And so
resources meaning separate apparatus.
So different fire engines, fire trucks, ambulances, different chief officers, they're coming at this incident really quickly. They all know that there's a child trapped, which for firefighters, that's a rare occasion where you have a victim en route, and everyone's going to be a little more adrenaline bumped. Like you were saying earlier, the voices are going to go higher.
Yep.
The cadence is going to go faster.
Hazmat command, what's your ETA? Shit. Truck 106 command. Are you able to possibly split and give me vertical ventilation if we need it?
But my job was to keep everybody calm. And so, long story short, we were able to initiate fire attack, rescue, and pull out this little boy from the back bedroom.
We got a victim right there, now, right there. Copy, we got the victim on the command post side.
And because of the hydrogen cyanide and the CO, he was lifeless and not breathing. However, he was in the back bedroom away from the fire, which was his parents' bedroom, and he was under a wool blanket in Sacramento in the summer, which is never unheard of, but it covered his face enough to prevent the heat from getting in his lungs. The CO and the hydrogen cyanide rendered him lifeless, not breathing, paralyzed his respiratory system. However, that blanket kept the heat from incinerating his lungs, which gave him a fighting chance. When our crews dove in, fire started coming at them immediately. They dove out with him. We transported him to the hospital, and long story short, this lifeless little boy, after being in at the Shriners Hospital for a week on a ventilator in an induced coma, walked out after a week by the grace of God. And the real part of this story that I think is most compelling is not that, it's what happened 4.5 years earlier. 4.5 years earlier, we had a fire similar where we actually lost a dad and his 2 kids. It was an apartment fire, just like this one, early in the morning, just like this one. 2-story apartment, virtually the same situation, different complex. And in this case, the dad went in to get his 2 kids out, and he succumbed to the flames, and all 3 of them perished. And I'd only been a battalion chief for a year, and it crushed me. I was a brand new dad. I just become a dad. And so now I've got this little baby girl at home. I'm 1 year incident commander, and I just lost a dad and his 2 kids, and it severely impacted me. I left that fire in tears. I was devastated, as were all of my crew members. And what pissed me off was our fire department was only 5 years old, and we still had no standard operating guidelines. We had no training. We had very little training for this kind of incident. We had very little incident command and officer development training. And so I basically said, look, this can never happen again. So I instituted a bunch of training in my battalion. We started doing everything differently, and we challenged our assumptions, and we trained more, and we learned about the best practices that hadn't really been applied yet in our organization. And of course, you get critics, right? Everybody thinks you're a renegade, and you're just doing it to show off and to look good and make it about yourself. And that was the last thing it was about. So for those of you guys listening, you're going to do things in your life and your career, maybe, or in your organization, that are going to challenge the status quo. And if you know it's the right thing to do, don't let those people deter you. And there was a lot of critics, but they hadn't gone through what we went through on that fire. They hadn't lost 2 kids and a dad. And so 4.5 years of trial and error and going back to the drawing board and recording my fire. I started recording all my fires, which everybody was worried about liability. Oh my God, it's liable. What if we look bad? Well, we do look bad. That's why I'm doing this.
Exactly.
So let's get better by using basically game film. We used basically this game film to review our fires, and we got better at it. And we challenged ourselves, and we got better. And then 4.5 years later, we had this fire where we saved this little boy. And for those of you who aren't firefighters, you can find the video on YouTube. It's called the El Camino Fire with Rescue on YouTube. El Camino, 2 words. And you can watch this short 5.5-minute video of this fire. And this time we left the fire, and I had tears of joy, tears of redemption, tears of deliverance. Like, thank you, Lord, that we were able to save this little dude and apply what we learned. And by the grace of God, that was in 2010, and here we are in 2025, and our curriculum that we used on that fire is now nationwide, a best-selling book I wrote with a friend of mine named Brian Brush, came out in 2024. It's not even been out a year yet. We're in our 4th printing. And I guess my lesson to those of you guys listening is, when you know there's a change that needs to happen in your life, whether it's in your own life, in your family, in your home, or at work, or in your church, your ministry, whatever you're doing, and you know it's the right thing to do, do it. And expect to have resistance, expect to have naysayers, expect to have people who think you're crazy. But if it's the right thing to do and you stick with it long enough, you'll prevail. And that's what this was all about for us.